Okay, it's great to see you again, and thanks very much for joining us in these conversations that we're having with professionals from around the world so that we can somehow understand the effect of the pandemic and any effect it's having on L&D, and I suppose more importantly, how we can respond to that as a profession. So I'm really pleased to welcome a very good friend of mine, Dr. Jeremy Gwee, with us today. So Jeremy, hello, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Harry.
Yeah, are things well with you?
Things are all well. We are now having the elections in Singapore. Yes.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I was just going to say, maybe you could tell us where you are, and maybe a little bit about what you do.
Right. I'm currently located in Singapore, and I represent the Institute of Training and Occupational Learning for Asia from here as my base in Singapore. And I've been doing it for the last couple of months, or probably, in fact, almost 8 months. That it has been a great 8 months journey.
Excellent. And do you mind me asking what you were doing before you were involved with
Oh,
ITEL?
right. Before I was involved with ITIL, I was actually in banking. I was in banking for the last 38 years. I would say banking and financial services, because in between my banking career, I was with actually Ernst & Young as consultant, as well as a small integration firm called Headstrong, and then with IBM.
Yeah.
But my banking career was with regional banks like Maybank, Deutsche Bank, and then with HSBC Bank in the last role. So just before I retired, I was the Chief Operating Officer for HSBC Bank in Singapore.
Excellent. So you've got a very wide experience then.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe Jeremy, you could just start us off by telling us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected L&D from your perspective.
Well, I think in the last few months since I represented the Institute, I had many opportunities to speak to people in the Institute, in L&D, just before the pandemic. I think now that the pandemic has really hit home, I think what is going to happen to the medium-sized companies is that they are going to take the steps of the bigger companies and maybe follow outsourcing more of the training. So you're going to find less in-house trainers. But then those people retained in-house for L&D, well, they are like in a coordinating function now. And I think they will need to, with this new perspective of L&D, they will need to step up somehow or other.
Have you discerned any change in the attitude of organizational management toward L&D as a profession?
Well, no, not really. Throughout my career, whenever we talk about cost cutting, the first place we'll cut is L&D. And that's basically because the reason that nobody really understands the strategic position of L&D. We may have all these concepts like the learning organizations, and all these sort of things, but it never translates into how the L&D actually can play a very pivotal role in such things. I think we need to continue the education about the strategic role of L&D. And perhaps this particular pandemic, this particular change in situation would give us the opportunity to share with our colleagues in L&D that they do have a strategic role rather than just a coordinating role in their companies. Because the pandemic is going to change many companies, the way they operate. Like we all are talking about the new norm. And what is the new norm that we are talking about? We're talking about a bigger workforce with contractual workers. We are going to talk about a virtual workforce of people working not just from home, not remotely, but when you are sitting in the UK or you're sitting in Hong Kong, you could have your staff all over any place in the world. Now, even though they are not with you physically, you still, from a development point of view, have got to keep them involved. Development is the part that helps employees, regardless of their status, to identify with the company. And I think this is the part that L&D got to step up. This is the part that L&D must know that they have a very strategic role to play.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So, just following on from that, do you think there are things that need to be in place to support L&D in this new world that you see for us?
Oh yes, there are quite a number of things that can be based. I think one thing is, when you look at it, is that, for example, the institute can be something where we have to relook at how we do the networking among our trainers, for example,
Mm.
kind of thing. It is where people who are trainers, who are from L&D, can you can provide the institute can sort of be the forum for them to exchange ideas as to where this new directions would be.
Mm.
I think it is in this sort of conversations that the L&D folks will gain the confidence of what is happening around the world, and where they can actually add value to their own organizations.
Mm.
So particularly, you see, when you look at L&D, when you look at training, for example, I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, and I said, he was telling me, he said, the coaching business already has also suffered because of the pandemic. And I said, yes, it's bound to suffer, just like L&D, just like training. But don't you think that training and coaching nowadays come together? Because when you look at training, it is actually a catalyst for change management. And unless you train, you will never know the performance gap, and you will never know what to coach.
Mm.
So there is a strategic need to see L&D training as a means of change, as a champion of change. And
Right.
how then from this change, other needs like coaching, mentoring, and all these things fall into place. If
Mm.
all of these things fall into place, we can definitely be able to manage the cost of L&D.
Mm.
Take it from me, I have managed costs before, huge costs. And costs always go overrun because cost is never coordinated.
Mm.
But when cost is synchronized and cost makes sense, nobody in their right mind who preach about organizational sustainability will just throw L&D out of the window.
No, no, yeah. So you think actually it's an opportunity for learning and development and training and coaching and all the associated disciplines to actually come into their own and to take a more prominent place?
Yes, it will be. And the training, the coaching, mentoring, all of that will be the face of the real organization. Because
Right.
just imagine, when you have got 40% of your workforce contract workers, probably then 50 or 60% virtual, then the people who conduct training, the people who conduct coaching, the people who conduct mentoring, these people become the face of the organization. They become the
Mm.
contact of the organization,
Mm.
right? They
Mm.
become the voice of the manager. So
Mm.
that becomes very important. It's going to
Yeah.
be this shift is going to take place. This shift is.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very interesting. There's a lot there that we could pursue if we had the time.
Oh yes.
But if I could just take you on a sideways journey for a minute and say that if somebody was coming to you today and they wanted to make a career in training in L&D and they wanted to know how they should develop themselves, what kind of advice would you give them? What would you say to them about their own development?
Well, I would first and foremost recommend them to have some form of expertise, an area of expertise that they could find interest in. And once they have 1, 2, or 3 years of this area expertise, then going into training makes a lot of sense, because then they can understand which part of the organization that they fit, and how they can actually, from that point of view, integrate the entire organization. Right? I spoke to a young man this morning. Um, he was a recruiter, and currently, and he is looking into going into training because of this situation where recruitment goes down. And so he asked me where to start from. I said, well, you are in the best positions to start training people in recruitment, to talk about job search strategies. You are in the best position to do that. So then from that point, you become a trainer. You don't become a trainer without context. You want to be a trainer with some form of context.
Yeah. Excellent. So just to finish off our conversation then, Jeremy, if I asked you for a word that would describe the future of L&D, what would it be?
Well, the future of L&D is, I would say, a bit more than a word, maybe. It is the future of L&D is in strategic change management. Because if you take the whole training bit, knowledge, skills, attitude, behavior, that's change. And L&D is the catalyst for change.
So just to condense it, change would be your word for the future.
Change would be my word, yes.
Brilliant. Jeremy, it's been lovely talking to you. Thanks very much. And I wish you
Harry.
all success in Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.